What's up, Solo Cups? My name is Jon Solo, and depending on the calendar that you follow, this is either the first episode of Messed Up Origins for the year, or the final one. That's because next week, January 29th, marks the first day of the Chinese lunar calendar, and some pretty amazing celebrations are about to be underway. 2024, the Year of the Dragon, will be coming to a close, while the Year of the Snake is ushered in. But have you ever wondered why the Chinese lunar calendar is so different than the one that we follow in the West? Or why each year is represented by an animal? How about why those animals are thought to reflect the temperaments of people born during that year? Those are the questions I'm answering today. But this is only the start of our newest adventure. After today's history lesson and story time conclude, you have 12 more episodes to look forward to. Starting next week and once a month thereafter, we're going to explore how the chi of each animal influences those born within their phase, as well as compare how these animals are represented in Eastern folklore compared to the West. There is so much more to the Chinese Zodiac than the placemats at your favorite restaurant would have you believe. So remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you want to learn all about it, and join me on my lifelong journey to shed the label of uncultured swine. So if you're familiar with Western astrology, Sagittarius, Aquarius, Scorpio, that whole thing, then you already have a pretty decent understanding of the very basics of Chinese astrology. Because according to both, the sign that you're born under has some kind of influence over your personality. But what kind of influence? And where did the zodiac come from? Well, it is different than Western astrology, where your sign, determined by the constellation you're born under, changes each month. Western astrology originated in Babylonia, where they plotted the movements of celestial bodies to determine the best time for planting and harvesting crops. Over time, these methods of celestial mapping evolved into a complicated system of divination based on the positions of the planets, and were then absorbed by nearby civilizations who ascribed their own sacred symbols to the stars. Those symbols range from people to animals to inanimate objects, and if you want to learn more about the myths behind them, you could check out my episode where I run through every single one. Also, like Western astrology, Chinese astrology has 12 phases, but they are all signified by animals, and each animal's active window lasts for an entire year. For example, I was born in 1994, so I'm a dog, and also a dog. But 2024, the year my daughter was born, was the year of the dragon. So I'm lucky enough to have a little dragon baby. 2025 is the year of the snake. There are more layers to it than that though, a lot more. But speaking strictly as an uncultured denizen of the West, I had never heard about this. Now it's not a perfect comparison, but you know how in Western astrology you have your sign and then there's some finicky sub-sign shit where people say you're Jupiter ascending or moon falling? Well, it's kinda like that. The simplest way to explain it is Chinese time is measured in a 60-year cycle, and the evidence shows it's been that way since the dawn of recorded Chinese history. Archaeologists have actually found bones from 1250 BCE with symbols from this 60-year cycle engraved into them. With this in mind, Chinese astrology incorporates a concept called Wu Xing, the interplay of the 5 elements of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Wu Xing doesn't have a direct translation to English, but roughly means changing states of being. In other words, the element associated with the animal changes based on the year. Each year represents one of the 12 animals, and each animal transitions through the influence of each of the 5 elements. So, by the end of the cycle, every animal will be influenced by every element. Twice, because each element has a yin version and a yang version. And then the 60-year cycle will start anew. Now, if we look at 1994 again, the element was wood. So I guess my sign is wood dog, or dog wood, which sounds like an old Western town, so I'm alright with it. There's still more to do to find your true sign in Chinese astrology though, because you gotta consider the 4 pillars, and the year that you were born is only one. Sadly, I can't contain a chart with every single one of your birthdays within this 1920 by 1080 pixel prison, but Google is your friend. Or if you want a much more detailed guide with examples, you can read The Chinese Zodiac and Other Paths to Luck, Riches, and Prosperity. The author, Aaron Huang, gives a thorough explanation of the Zodiac's fundamentals while keeping it simple and straightforward. An Amazon affiliate link is at the bottom of the description if you want to check it out and support the channel in the process. Anyway, the second pillar is determined by the month. This chart does fit on the screen, and if you look for October 23rd, 1994, you get Wood dog. Again? Seriously? The third pillar is based on the day, and you have to do some algebra to determine your exact animal and element. Now, I'm a words guy, so there's no possible way I can explain any kind of math concepts to you, but what I can confirm is that my sign was horse water. And that took an embarrassing amount of time to calculate. The fourth and final pillar is decided by the hour. Each of the animals presides over a 2-hour window where their energy is at its strongest. I was born at 3:21 p.m. on a water horse day, which means it was Earth Monkey hour. As the series goes on, we're going to get into the specifics of what each animal and element signify, as well as their unique combos, but today our mission is to uncover the origins of the Zodiac, and that wouldn't be possible without our sponsor, Squarespace. The new year is a time to start fresh, time to make the changes and start pursuing the goals that I spent all of last year procrastinating. That's where Squarespace comes in, because they want to help your dreams come true. I've been talking about Squarespace for years now, but there has never been a better time to give them a try than 2025. They are far and away the best service to use if you're looking to build a website of any kind, and everyone from head chefs to yoga instructors to Hollywood actors agree. What makes Squarespace so great is that you don't have to know anything about coding or traditional web design mechanics. They just implemented their new AI, Design Intelligence, that can create an entire website for you after a few simple prompts. And let's say you love what the AI turned out, but you want to make a few specific tweaks. Squarespace makes that super simple with their one-of-a-kind drag-and-drop technology, which allows you to arrange assets however you like, and intuitive menus for adding text, product listings, and more. So if you want to see why Squarespace has been the dominant force in web design for 2 decades, you can start a free trial by going to squarespace.com/Jon Solo. Then, when you realize you love it, use code Jon Solo for 10% off your first purchase. So maybe you're thinking, great, I'm a metal pig. What do I gain with this information? The same thing you gained from knowing you were born while Mercury was in retrograde.
Absolutely nothing.
Nah, to answer your question, we have to go back in time to a period called the Han Dynasty, specifically to around 200 BCE, when astrology went through a sort of renaissance. As mentioned earlier, the Chinese calendar has been broken down into 60-year cycles for as long as we know Chinese culture has existed. We also have evidence that animals have been used as symbols and totems in all cultures going as far back as history can record. However, the union of animals with the cycle and the expansion of the system to include the year, day, and hour did not occur until the Han Dynasty. Sometime during that period, the Zodiac began to evolve into the system as we now understand it. The 60-day cycle was now used as a way to determine not only the energy of a person's birth and character, but also the chi of the universe around them. Collectively, this information could be used to help a person plot a more harmonious route through life, one that's tailored to their strengths. The system developed into a way of predicting future dates of significance like bountiful harvests, the birthdays of China's future rulers, and even gauge how successful the reigns of those rulers would be. Then the practice spread to the wider Chinese population, who applied the predictions to their own lives. It's easy to understand why this system would appeal to the masses. Not only do you get to learn more about yourself, but also knowing your personality's weaknesses and strengths, or what the fates have in store for you, allows you to prepare and strategize for the road ahead. Life is scary and full of random chaos, especially in ancient times when less was understood about the world, and systems like this gave people the much-needed feeling of control over their lives. Now, who actually knows if having a baby in X month of Y year really determines success in their careers or romantic lives, but in some ways, I think this stuff can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. Speaking from personal experience, I lost count of how many times my mom told me when I was growing up that my future was so bright it burned her eyes. And I think that gave me a confidence that I was destined for something big. I never expected that something big to be talking about myths and fairy tales on the internet, but I'll take it. Point being, that motivated me. It gave me confidence and something to aim for with my life, to make my parents proud. Similarly, knowing your sign is the Earth Tiger and the Earth Tigers are celebrated for their entrepreneurship might give you the confidence to pursue that crazy business idea, even if a foreskin extender does seem like an awfully niche product. But hey, no episode of Messed Up Origins is complete without an origin story, and the Chinese Zodiac's got a pretty great one. According to myth, the Chinese Zodiac was created by either the Jade Emperor or Buddha. For today's purposes, we're going with the Jade Emperor, but it really doesn't matter. You see, long ago, before the Zodiac was created, time was flowing about all willy-nilly, and the Emperor wanted to make order of the chaos. With help from the members of his heavenly court, they plotted out the flow of chi and broke it down into hours, days, months, and years, each one consisting of 12 phases. Then he declared that each phase would be symbolized by one of China's native animals, and that he would host a great race to determine which animals were worthy. The goal was simple: swim across the celestial river and reach the Emperor's heavenly palace. But this was much easier said than done. Not only did some animals have a natural disadvantage with swimming, but the river had a raging current that would be difficult for even strong swimmers to cross. One thing's for certain: if I was in that race, I would have drowned. I know because I completed a sprint triathlon last year. And that's not a flex, because the swimming portion was only a quarter mile, and throughout the entire thing, I looked like Samwise at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring. Turns out, I'm not as good a swimmer as I thought, which means I can no longer judge Tommy Vercetti, John Marston, or really any rock star protagonist. Anyway, the Jade Emperor signified the start of the race by shooting a lone golden firework into the air, and the contestants were off. This is where the story gets really interesting, because many of the animals' personalities are reflected in their strategy for completing the race. Some of the smaller creatures, like the beetle and the hedgehog, were eliminated immediately after being swept away by the raging current, while others, like the deer, witnessed their eliminations and decided the juice just wasn't worth the squeeze. Not everyone was so easily discouraged, though. The rat and cat both knew they wouldn't stand a chance if they went in the water on their own, so they convinced the ox to let them ride on his back. It was a generous move by Ox, showing that he clearly was not intimidated by his competition. The same could not be said for the rat, who, about halfway across the river, realized that if it came down to it, the cat could easily kill him and take his spot. Not one to let problems fester, Rat took a preemptive approach. While Cat was focused on the journey ahead, Rat snuck up behind her and pushed her off the ox into the water. It was a cold-hearted play, but the rat understood what was at stake. He and his fellow rodents had always been looked down upon by other animals and admonished by humans. Getting on the Zodiac was his only chance to change that. This wasn't his only selfish act, though, because when he and his mount reached the shoreline, he leapt off Ox's head right into first place and sped across the finish line, paying no mind to the fact that he most definitely would have drowned if it weren't for Ox's help. In third place, just behind Ox, was Tiger, who witnessed Rat's complete lack of sportsmanship and felt inclined to finish strong on behalf of all felines everywhere. As for the cat that was pushed in, legend says she's still struggling against the current to this day. Not far behind Tiger was Rabbit, who may not have been a strong swimmer, but she didn't have to be. Instead, she went with the old Frogger strategy and used her powerful legs to catapult her from stone to stone, and this proved to be an effective strategy. Until she slipped. At first, she felt immediately discouraged because while the log was careening toward the shoreline, it was going real slow, and she realized she'd probably be a kilometer downriver by the time she was close enough to jump across. Suddenly, though, the wind picked up, and Rabbit's log jetted across the water to the shore, securing her the 4th place spot on the Zodiac. Coming up right behind her in 5th place was none other than the dragon, who most of the animals thought would be the first one to finish on account of his ability to fly. But the honorable dragon found itself a higher purpose during the race: to help the small and meek achieve greatness. When he witnessed the poor little rabbit trapped on the log, he used his powerful breath to steer the log in the right direction. After Rabbit secured her 4th place spot, the dragon took 5th place, feeling more pride than it would have if it got first like they all expected. If only the other contestants had that same sportsmanship. But you would be a fool to expect that from a snake. Snake was confident in his swimming abilities, but he knew this contest would be determined by brains as much as brawn, and when he saw Horse at the starting line, a plan came to mind. Snake quietly and covertly coiled itself around the horse's leg and allowed him to do all the heavy work of trudging across the river. But when they got to the finish line, Snake sank his teeth into Horse's leg, causing him to rear up on his hind legs. This brief pause was all Snake needed to slither up into 6th place, while the shaken up horse sulked into 7th. After witnessing the heartless acts of bloodshed and betrayal from the ones who finished in front of them, the next 3 contestants made a pact that they would stick together until the end. You see, neither monkey, nor rooster, nor goat were very good swimmers. In fact, they were all pretty terrible. Lucky for them, the rooster found a raft big enough to fit them all, and with a little bit of paddling, this allowed the unlikely team to cross the river safely. The goat finished the race in 8th place, the monkey in 9th place, and the rooster in 10th place. Now when it comes to our final 2 finishers, let's just say they're lucky so much of their competition was taken out or scared off by the river, because these 2 took their sweet time. Dog was a great swimmer and could have crossed just fine, but he was filthy from digging holes the prior afternoon and desperately needed a bath, so he didn't bother to cross until he was sufficiently clean. It was at this point that the Emperor was about to close the race, thinking all but 11 animals had been eliminated. But before he could make the declaration, he heard a distinct snort off in the distance. Slowly emerging out of the water was Pig, looking exhausted but very satisfied. It turns out that Pig passed out almost immediately after the starting firework. He had apparently filled himself up on apples and other delicious treats while waiting for his competitors to arrive, and according to him, he had to sleep it off to be his usual agile self. So he may have finished last, but most animals didn't finish at all, meaning Pig was well worthy of the 12th and final place on the Zodiac. Guess he couldn't jump. Alright, fine, you could, but you didn't want to. Is that what you wanted to hear? So now you know how the Chinese Zodiac came to be. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Hello? Leave a comment with your sign and your thoughts down below. Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And lastly, and this is the most important bit of all, I need you to remember, Jon shot first.